Begin the current Daf, Mesech Kesuvos Daf Lamadal. Begin 2 lines up at the bottom of the Yomei of Gimel Beis. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion of the previous Daf. We had a contradiction regarding the halacha of our Mishnah to open up this parak. Elanai Sheshim Knas. In our parak, in our Masechta, we said that there are certain women that are going to get a Knas. However, that seems to be contradicted from Mishnah that was Marcus that said that you get Malchus for them. In Likud Mishalem. So we had 2 different interpretations, either which is the primary, you get Malchus and no Tashlumin, or Tashlumin and not Malchus, depending if there's Asra or not. That was the first 2 interpretations. The third one, Rish Lakish said, our Mishnah is like your mayor that says Likud Mishalem. It's not a contradiction, you get both. You get Malchus and you pay. So therefore our Mishnah makes sense and that Mishnah says too. The Gemara says, wait a second, it's like your mayor, but even his daughter also, even if he's going to be Ma'anis, his daughter, you should say that you're going to be Mesa Mishalem. And therefore, why are you saying there's no Knas by Bita? It says the Gemara, if you think they say your mayor hold to only get Lake Mishalem and not Mesa Mishalem, what do you do with a Braisa, Ganabatav, B'Shabbos, Ganabatav, Gechavim, all these cases where the mayor says that you're going to pay Tashlumin B'Rabba Chamisha, even though you're getting Misa, let's say B'Chil Shabbos. So you see, he does hold Mesa Misham. So why don't you say if the time of our Mishnah is Remeir that even there should be Knas by the case of Bita? So the Gemara says not true. It doesn't hold Mesa Misham. The halacha of Ganam V'Tavach V'Shabbos, all those cases, is talking about Kikar Tavach Al Yidei Acher V'Tevech Al Yidei Acher. It's talking about where the slaughtering happened to someone else. So if there's someone else, so therefore he didn't do a Chil Shabbos, so therefore he can be L'chayim. That's what the Gemara says. How's that possible? If it's someone else, how could he be chayiv dal v'hei? How could he be chayiv for the tashlumin that someone else did? So that the Gemara had 3 different sources to say that we have a riboy of a shliach. But the last thing the Gemara said in the previous stop was that is it possible that he would do it, he'd be potter, and someone else is doing it, he's going to be chayiv? Yes, because when he does it, he's not potter because that's him intrinsically, he didn't do anything wrong. It's only because when someone else does it, therefore, he's going to be chayiv, just like he'd be chayiv himself. There's no kibbutz rameh. He's doing one thing and he's doing the other thing. He didn't do the chil Shabbos. There's no kibbutz rameh in that case. So our Gemara continues now and says that if you talk about that machlekes in that brisa, so then what would be the understanding of the Rabbanan to say you potter? There's no kibbutz rameh. That's how our Gemara continues. She corresponds to the test to today's daf. Something to discuss in today's daf as we were just beginning to explain the reasoning for the machlekes remain the chacham in the cases of the Ganam Shabbos. Again, what's unique about these cases is that there's a liability because whenever you steal an animal and you slaughter it, so there's a liability of Dal V'Hib, you're doing it on Shabbos, or you're doing it for B'Day Zar, or you're doing it that it's a Shur HaNisko. Additionally, the Gemara brings the machlekes regarding when one is Machal Shabbos B'Mezid, so there's an Isra Achila Olam, you're not allowed to eat that thing forever. But we have Rabbi Yehuda who says it's only for the person, and Rabbi Shloimy says it's for him and for everyone that if someone does, let's say, cooks on Shabbos, someone does a chil Shabbos, it's going to be usher forever. The Rabbi explains the Machlekes and Chachamim, not like our Gemara started saying from the previous daf that it's through someone else. He says it's even al de'atzmai. So how could it be al de'atzmai? Because he says that they disagree if we say that Abig of the Mikdal Mashalom, although generally, Remeir, you're right, does not hold Mesa Mishalom, like we're explaining for the halacha of our Mishnah, is that by Bitoy, Ma'anas is Bitoy, with his Chiyav Misa, you're not going to pay the Teshlumin. But by Knas, by Dal V'Hei, actually Remeir would hold, according to what Rabbi explains, that you're going to be Mesa Mishalom. So my key terms of the concept discussing today is Davar Teshlumin B'Rabba Chamisha, again, which is that every time someone steals, when he's caught, he's liable for also the penalty of kefil of double the amount. If it was an ox or a sheep, and then he slaughters it or he sells it, he's liable for 4 or 5 times that amount too. The concept of shchita and yerui leishon mashchita, which is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, that if there's a slaughtering that's not fit to eat after you slaughter it, that's not called slaughtering. You didn't do a tvicha. And davar gam lamam kamam dami is an interesting halacha that comes up in the bottom of Am and Aleph that if when there's a shamer who's watching someone else's ox and it gores while he's watching it, and now it's Chayiv Misa, if he returns the ox as is, so that is considered returning, because he gave him back an ox. Now, if someone else would go ahead and be mazik that ox, so that, although it doesn't really have any value because it's going to be stone, but it's a goyim l'mammon, because now that he can't return the ox as it is, he's going to have to compensate the owner of the ox for an ox, and if it's kamam dami, therefore the one who's being mazikin is going to be liable. So begin the current daf Lam Gimel Beis, 2 lines up at the bottom of the Amid. We're in the middle of a conversation over here, which we said the cases of Ganach v'Tava v'Shabbos, Ganach v'Tava l'Medazar, Ganach v'Shar, Niskel Tzvacha. Rameh says you have to pay Dal v'Hei, and the Chacham said you pater. So we said, according to Meir, how you chayv Dal v'Hei, because there's no Kumul Dram in it, because it was Tevech al De'achar. It was done through someone else. Okay, so he didn't do the Chil Shabbos. He didn't do this other liability. And so why is he Chayav Dal V'Hei? Because here we're Mar B'Shliach, as the Gemara brought 3 different sources, interpretation, to be Mar B'Shliach for the liability of Dal V'Hei. But now the Gemara says, if you tell me the case that he slaughtered through someone else, let's say on Shabbos, so my time I did Rabban the Patri. So what's the reason Rabban that they say that the one who sent, if you hold this halach of Shlichus for the liability of Dal V'Hei, so there's no Kimlin Rabbaneh. There's someone else did the Chil Shabbos, not getting stoned for Chil Shabbos. So why would he not be chayiv Dal V'Hei for that animal that he stole? Says Gemara, Man Chacham, who's the Chachamim in this brayso that says he can be potes, Getin Havlam Adal Medal? It's Rabbi Shimon, who's brought in Perek Meruba, Perek Kisadam, Perek Leisav. He's brought a few times in Shas. The Amar that he says, Shchita Sheneruya, if it's a slaughtering that's not fit, that you're not going to be able to eat, Lo Yishma Shchita, so hasnish, it's not called, it's not defined as a slaughtering. The halach of Dal V'Hei is when you took an ox that you stole and you slaughtered it. This is not called an act of slaughtering if it's not going to permit you to eat. So all these cases of Ganach v'Tava v'Shabbos, all these things are cases that it's not ru'ya, as the Gemara explains. The Gemara says, wait a second. Ha'teinach avodas kacham. I understand. One of the cases was that if you went and you stole and you slaughtered for avodas zara, that's going to be considered shchit shenirui, because that's what's called zivchei mesim. If you slaughter for avodas zara, it becomes asa b'hana. It's a shchit shenirui. You can't eat it. It's even asa b'hana. So I understand that no shchita was done. There was no tvicha to be liable. I know the other case for shar nisko, an ox that once the verdict was handed down that it has to be stoned because it killed a person, so it didn't have any benefit from it. Zigma learns on Baba Kama Psachim that if it says sakal yisakal, so of course if it's being stoned, I know it's nevela. Of course you can't eat it. Why you tell me you can't eat it? Come and tell you even before you stoned it, even before it's a being in nevela, it's asbana. So you slaughter it, you do a shchita. It's kosher. You can slaughter it. No, it's asbana. So I understand it's not considered a tevicha. Now the shchita Shabbos, but if you slaughter on Shabbos, the first case that we brought, Ganach v'Tava v'Shabbos, shchita ru'yihi. Even if you did chil Shabbos, you still could eat from it, still kosher food. There's not like learning Meshem Mesechtes Chulin. Hasheichet b'Shabbos Yom Kippurim. Someone slaughters on Shabbos Yom Kippurim. Afa b'Shem Eschai b'Nafshay. Even though he's liable for his life, he did chil Shabbos. He has to be he's chayv nisa shchitasik sheila. Otherwise, he's giving a cut for a shchita. It's a valid slaughtering. So why are you telling me that? Who is the Tan of the Bryce? Is the Chacham? Who holds a Rabbi Shimon? The shchita shenirui loishma shchita. Those are all the other cases. But what are you going to do with shechting on Shabbos? That is something that is mutter to be eaten. So that should be a shchita ru'ya. Why you exempt, therefore, from Dal V'Hei? Says the Gemara, especially because saying it's tzvicha de'achas, someone else doing the chil Shabbos, but the owner, the Mishaleach, he should be, the real Ganav, he should be chayiv. Says the Gemara, Sabala Kaviyachana Sabla. Says the Tana of the Braisa, who's holding like Reb Shimon, also the Kaviyachana Sabla, who as we're going to bring a Braisa, holds that when the chil Shabbos is done, the Mezid, it is asa for everyone forever to eat. And therefore it's a shchita she'ein ru'ya. So although you're right, you brought me a Mishnah, Mesechtes Chulin, Rabbi Yochanan Sadlan disagrees, and he holds it's considered shchita she'ein ru'ya, and therefore it's going to qualify for this teaching of Reb Shimon, loishma shchita. So therefore, of course, you're not going to be chayav Dal V'Hei, because no tvicha was done. I did an act of slaughtering. Halachically, we don't qualify for the slaughtering if it does not permit you to eat it. Where is this Rabbi Yochanan Sadlan? So the time we learn the Braisa, this is a machlekes regarding 3 different opinions how to qualify chil Shabbos, what's called ma'aseh Shabbos. If someone did something prohibited on Shabbos, what's the subsequent halacha? Someone for Shabbos. Someone cooks on Shabbos. He's making omelets on Shabbos. So if it's b'shegig, if he did it by mistake, so yoichel, he could eat it even on that day itself. He's going to have by Shalosh Shudas those omelets. The Nezid does it deliberately. He knows it's Shabbos, he doesn't care. Lo yochel, he cannot eat it himself, but other Jews could eat it. That's the Rameir. That's the opinion of Rameir. Yehuda is a little bit more stringent. He says, B'shaygig, if he did it by mistake, yochel, the person himself could eat it, not on Shabbos like Rameir said. He could eat it only l'matzah Shabbos, after Shabbos, but not on Shabbos itself, because we penalize him what's called shaygot amazing. If we let you eat it by mistake, you might come to do it deliberately. Those omelets were pretty good fresh on Shabbos Judas. You might come to do it deliberately, so therefore, no, you can't. Even the person himself could only eat it, even if he did it by mistake, matzah Shabbos. But maybe if he did it deliberately, lo yochel, he cannot eat it, oilamis, forever, but others could eat it. And this is the opinion that we want to have, that we're trying to show. Primarily, he's the Tana that we said that if you do Chil Shabbos b'mezid, it's going to be asa for everyone. So, although the Bray's talking about cooking, regarding the context of slaughtering that we're talking about, it's a shchita shenarui because no one's going to be able to eat from it. He says b'shaygig, if it was done by mistake, yochel matzah Shabbos. So then he could eat it matzah Shabbos la'acherim, so he's the most chamer. He says even if the guy did it by mistake, no one could eat it on Shabbos, and even matzah Shabbos, only others could eat it, not himself. Okay, but that's not the main point. The main point is the next line. B'mezid, if he did it deliberately, lo yochel oilamis, it cannot be eaten forever. Lo loy v'lo la'acherim, not for him, not for others, Jewish. But he's allowed to sell it and give it to a non-Jew. But upon them, this is a shchita shenarui, right? Because give it to a non-Jew, you give it the mail to a non-Jew. The shchita that you did on Shabbos, the bishul that you did on Shabbos, it's not raw. No one could eat it forever. So therefore, that was the case of Ganach with Daf Shabbos. They said according to Chacham, it's going to be a shchita shenarui. The other case made sense, of course. The Esabahana, the Shahanisko, the Abedazara. What's the case of Shabbos? I thought Shabbos is a kosher shchita. Not according to Birchim Samlah. According to Birchim Samlah, it's also for everyone forever. Now the Gemara brought in this brisa, this because we wanted to show who is the previous Chacham going like. So it says the Gemara, what's the reason of Rabbi Yochanan Sandler for this halacha that he says that Ma'aseh Shabbos, that's what it's called, the act of Chilul Shabbos, is usher to be eaten forever? It's Kedidarash Reb Chia, a Pesach de Benesi. It's like Reb Chia, he gave a drasha by the entryway of the house of the Nasi. He expounded a pasuk in Shemais. The pasuk says, "Ushmartem es Shabbos," you should safeguard the Shabbos ki kodesh hilachem, because it's holy to you. Now you're comparing the Shabbos to kodesh, to kodesh. Ma kodesh just like kodshim. Asabachila, a person's not allowed to eat from it. Ma'aseh Shabbos, so too, and because it's hektish, it's forbidden. So to Ma'aseh Shabbos is when someone does something cooking on Shabbos to be forbidden to be eaten. So he says, wait a second, no, we're comparing it to kodshim. Kodshim not have any benefit from it. That's me'ilah. Ma'aseh Shabbos is, but no, maybe something, if someone cooked on Shabbos, it'd not only be forbidden to be eaten, it'd be forbidden to even have benefit, and you wouldn't be able to even sell it to a non-Jew. It says in the pasuk, no lochem. It's kodeshi, but it's lachem, which is shalachem. It should be yours. It's just holy and yours, which means say you let it benefit from it, but you cannot eat it. Now, you would think to say it would be forbidden to be eaten, even if someone, let's say, cooked it by mistake, where he didn't know that it's Shabbos. He always woke up, he drank so much that night, and he was making his eggs groggily. This and that. Shabbos, oy he didn't realize he already made the eggs. It takes like 3 seconds to make eggs. Can we eat it? So you would think that even if he does b'shayg, it would be forbidden. That says in the pasuk, says no. In that same pasuk, that whoever desecrates it will surely die, which is teaching us that when there's a liability of death, then it's forbidden to be eaten like kodesh. Because I only told you that it should be forbidden like kodshim when you did it deliberately, because it's saying in the same context as a chiv of nisa, but not ever done by mistake. So this halacha of being forbidden forever, Rabbi Yochanan Samlah, is because comparing it to kodshim, but only regarding to the isachil, not regarding the isana, and again, it's only if it does deliberately, not done b'shayk. Now, in this opinion of Rabbi Yochanan Samlah, we have pligi bar Rav Acha v'Ravina. We have a machlekes regarding the extent of this opinion. Chanama one says, Ma'aseh Shabbos, this that it's forbidden if it's done on Shabbos is d'oraisa. If someone deliberately does chil Shabbos, it's forbidden to be eaten according to Rabbi Yochanan Samlah min haTorah. Another one says no, the Rabban is only rabbinic to halacha. This day says asura olachedim lo'olam is rabbinic halacha. So the Gemara explains the reason for their opinions. Mandam is the one that says biblical. It's because like we said, we just brought up a pasuk that Reb Chia gave a pischa de beinasiyah he brought the pasuk. We compare it to kodesh. The pasuk is making a hekesh and saying that it's going to be azar to eat. But one says rabbinic says no. Amakar, the pasuk says kodesh he. Yeah, the other one was telling on the word kodesh. Here he's telling on the word he. To tell you he is a terminology that is excluding. It's bimamai. He kodesh to say Shabbos is holy. They masel kodesh, but its actions, the chilul Shabbos, is not going to have the same halacha as kachim, and to the contrary, it's not going to be forbidden. It's only midrabanan that is this halacha of Rabbi Shloimy that it's forbidden. Now, then the Gemara goes back to the question. Well, then according to that, man Amar, either Rabbi Rabbeinu, whichever one it was, that holds that Ma'aseh Shabbos, if you do cooking or slaughtering on Shabbos, it's only rabbinic. So, we're back to the question. What's the reason Rabbanan that disagree with Reb Meir in the previous brayso and the previous daf? The patri that they exempt the person from the penalty of 4 or 5 times. Since the slaughtering was through someone else, we explained, even according to Reb Shimon, it is a shchita duya midayraisa. You told me it's through somebody else. And it's through somebody else, so we understood why Kondra made me chayiv. So we want to know, Kondra Rabban, why you me patas? It's because shchita shchita. It's not a fet shchita. So not doing kimon ramne. It's just you pata because you're not doing a shchita. But says, according to the one who holds that the ma'aseh is only rabbanon, that means with the raisa it is a valid shchita and it is mutter. So then that's not, we're not using it as a kula. Definitely it should be chayiv for dal v'hei for doing the tvicha on this animal. Why are you going to be pata? Says the Gemara, you're right. According to that man, when the rabbis disagree in all those cases, all those cases, they exempted you from Dal Hey only Ashar on the rest, on the Zar and Shar Nisko. But if on the case of stealing and slaughtering on Shabbos, yeah, the hell should be chayiv. Because it is biblically a valid, it is a shchita, you're going to be able to eat from it. So rabbinically you cannot eat it according to that man Dama. It is called the tvicha, and you did it, and it was done through someone else. So the one who didn't do it, the owner, the one who stole it, and then he had someone else slaughtered for him, he's going to be chayiv dal v'hei. Now, so that answers that question according to the Mandama Rabban. But now the Gemara goes back to some of the other cases and says even the other cases are not 100% fully understood. We had the case of Ganach v'tavach l'abedazar, and we said, oh, that's pretty obvious. That's a shchit sheneruy because it becomes also b'hanah. So of course you're not going to be chayiv dal v'hei according to Rabban. Problem is, says the Gemara, the case of when you slaughtered for idolatry purposes. Let's break it down. Even the shachad be'porta, once a ma'aser shchita takes a few seconds, or whatever it is, once you slaughtered a little bit, it becomes forbidden in that moment. Like the Gemara says in the Chud of Mem and Aleph, if let's say someone's friend's animal was laying in front of an idol, the moment you slaughtered siman echad, there's 2 simanim, there's 2 pipes in the animal's neck, and once you slaughtered one of them, it already becomes forbidden as a service of idolatry. Now when you're slaughtering the other pipe, which is what makes the animal kosher to be eaten, you're not slaughtering the owner's animal anymore because it's already asa bahana. It's already avodah zara. The liability of tashlum and of dal v'hei, it says a terminology of tavicha, slaughtering. Until you finish the shchita, you're not chayiv. Now, before you finish the slaughtering, it was already forbidden bahana from the first pipe. So that moment that you did the first pipe, you already created a loss for the owner. Because even if it would be around, it wouldn't be returned as is, because it's not the owner's anymore, it's also bahana. So the question essentially is, even the contrary, Meir, why are you saying you're going to be chayiv because the tvicha as was al day achar, so there's no kimon b'ramene? But the problem is, there's no tvicha over here. Tvicha is taking someone else's animal, stealing it, slaughtering it. You slaughtered his animal. You didn't slaughter his animal because there's no more animal over here that's his anymore. The moment you slaughtered one pipe, it's already asa ba'ana. So what's the tvicha? It's not even the halacha of tvicha of ruya or shchita ruya. It's not his, the way Rashi is saying it. So Amar Rabba says a very technical answer. He says, you're right. But Amar is talking about where he says, he's only worshipping it when he finishes the slaughtering. Then he's worshipping it like a zar. So then it's not going to be considered worshipping him like a zar until he finishes the zvicha. So although generally if you're doing it just in general, one pipe is already considered a Maisa Zvicha for the Avodah Zarah, for its worship. Here you say, I only want to do it at the end. So then he did, together with the Avodah Zarah, he did the Maisa Zvicha, and therefore that's the machlekes regarding, it's done through someone else. So you didn't do the Avodah Zarah, but you're going to be chayav for the Tzvicha of Dal V'Hei. Now the Gemara goes a similar type of question to the other case. Also, the last case we had, we went through Ganach B'Tavach B'Shabbos. We had to explain that it's going to be Yochanan Sandler for the Chacham. Then we just explained Ganach B'Tavach B'Shabbos. Now we're discussing the third case. Shahar Nisko. We said if you steal a Shahar Nisko, which is someone has an ox. Now let's say kill the person. The ox has to be stoned. So here's this ox waiting to be stoned, and someone steals the ox, and then he slaughters it. So in a machlekes Rabbeinu Chachamim regarding if you can be chayav or not, which the Gemara asks, what do you mean? Shar niska lav didehu dekatavach. That's not the person. The shar niska is already asabana. So why does Rabbeinu say you can be chayav dal behei? It's not the person's. It's no one's. It's hefker. It's asabana. So why you chayav dal behei for slaughtering that animal? So Rabbi has a very interesting answer. He says, "Safta my skin. What are we talking about over here? Is a specific case. We're talking about a guy owns an ox, and he gives it over to someone, a guardian, to watch his ox. He's going to overseas for a few weeks. I need you to watch my ox. Now, this shamer, when he's watching it, he wasn't so careful. Doesn't know how to watch these oxen, and it goes in wax, and it damages and kills the person. So, when the shamer, the guy's still overseas, the courts, the Bezdin says, that's it, we're going to execute this ox because it killed the person. Then, a thief, middle of the night, after the verdict was already handed down, they're waiting until they get, to execute this ox. Somebody steals the ox from the house of the shamer. And, two more conditions. Remeir, who we're saying he holds Yichad Dal Behei, holds like Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Shimon. What is these Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Shimon that's necessary to understand why he holds Yichad Dal Behei? So the Gemara explains. Soblik Rabbi Yaakov, which is a machlekes, Rabbi Yaakov is in Baba Kama. Rabbi Yaakov says, Av Mishin Nigmedinoi, even when the verdict was already handed down, that this ox is going to be stoned. If the shomer, the guardian, the owner comes back, it's like, where's my ox? He goes, by the way, when I was watching the ox, it actually killed the person. It's chayav misa. But here, this is your ox back. The halacha is muchzir. It's considered returned. Why? Because he could tell him, you gave me an ox, I'm giving you back an ox. So even though this ox is going to be stoned, Rabbi Yaakov holds that that's okay, you can give it back as it is, even though it doesn't really have any value. Because you're giving him back what it is that he gave you. That's one thing, but that's contingent on another piece. The Sabla Rabbi Shimon, and also this Remeir holds like Rabbi Shimon, that he says, Dava hagoyim l'mammon, something that is a causation of money. It's not worth money really, but it'll cause monetary value or loss. Is kamamadami, has halacha like money's itself. So what's the significance over here also? Even though this ox has no value whatsoever, it's going to be stoned. It's already asa b'hana. It's a goyim l'mammon. Well, what do you mean it causes money? Because if this ox is not here anymore, this shomer is going to have to pay back heavy cash for the value of the shor to the owner. But as long as the ox is here, he can say, Harish l'chol lefanecha, he can give him back the ox as it is.
Even though he's a Peshayev?
What?
Even though he was a Peshayev in Shemitah?
Yeah, I'm saying even though he's liable and it's going to be stoned, it doesn't really want to make it, so you want to know what's the Shmir Shabai.
Was it Shemachir or Shemaschar?
Right, yeah, so you have, no, meaning would he be chayav?
After the ox is killed, is he Shemachir or
Shemachir? We're talking about where he's responsible, right? Because if he's not responsible, then we wouldn't have to say anything about return. He is chayav, he has to give it back, but we're saying that this is considered giving it back, because he's giving back the thing as it is. But the fact that when this guy steals it from the shomer, so although it's not worth anything, but it's a goyim l'mammon because it's going to cause him a loss of $1,000 for the value of that shor, which Rabbi Shimon has brought in Baba Kama Peg Meruba, that if there's kudshim that you chayiv b'achriyusim. Let's say someone takes a neder, where he's responsible for that kachuk. If someone steals that ox from him, he has to, and slaughters it, he has to pay dal v'hei. Why? Because it's goyim l'mammon. So though hektish is not considered mammon bailim, and hektish doesn't apply knas because it says re'ehu, you still have to pay. Why? It's hektish. It doesn't. It's re'ehu. It doesn't apply, and also it's not yours. Yeah, but it's goyim l'mammon. If you steal this ox from me, I gotta go and now insure it now, and so therefore insurers have that halacha of is a goyim l'mammon. So therefore, that's why the mayor says that you're going to be chayav dal b'hei even if you steal a shar haniskel and you slaughter it, because it's from a shomer who could have given back the animal as it is, because like Rabbi Yaakov says, and therefore, like Rabbi Shimon says, now that you're causing him a monetary loss, even though it's not money itself that you're actually damaging, it's kamamadami, and therefore going to be chayav dal b'hei. Now the Gemara goes and says a different approach in how to explain the brisa. We had a question. We said that we wanted to explain, according to Shlokish, the Tana of our Mishnah in the Elon Iris is going like Reb Meir. And therefore it's not a contradiction. Mishnah Masechtas Makis. What's the halacha with those chiv creases? Are they going to be chayiv tashlumen of oines? Or are they going to be chayiv malchus? So he said, no problem. It's like Reb Meir, who holds that, yeah, you could be like a mishal. Then what about Bita? Bita is a chiv nisus bezdin if you had relations with your daughter. And our Mishnah, in the coming Mishnah, says that you can be potter from tashlumin. Well, why did you say Mesa Mishal? He says, no, he doesn't hold Mesa Mishal. Yes, you get malchus and you pay, but you won't get death penalty and pay. He says, so what do you do with the brisa of you stole and you slaughtered for Avodah Zarah. Meir says you can be chayiv dal v'hei. You can chayiv misa for Avodah Zarah. How are you going to be chayiv for the slaughtering of it, of dal v'hei? He says, the first answer the Gemara gave was tabach al de'acher. Someone else, he asked someone else, he stole it, and someone else slaughtered it for me. So that guy's going to get the chayiv misa, not him. So why is he chayiv dal v'hei? So the Gemara brought because of three different ribuyim that shliach, although generally for aver ain't shliach of v'avei. Here the shliach is even like you did. It's shliach shalom k'maisa. So you can be chayiv dal v'hei. That was the first approach the Gemara gave. Now Rabba Amar in the last line of the Gemara, he says no. It's talking about where the guy himself slaughtered for Avodah Zarah, which sounds like that you can chayiv misa and pay because he's doing Avodah Zarah and he's slaughtering someone else's animal that he stole to be chayiv dal v'hei. So the question then is, so how's that possible? Because if we said in our Mishnah, the next coming Mishnah, that by Bita, if his ma'anas daughter doesn't get the Teshlumin, sounds like you're not Mesa Mishal. So how do we understand this if you're being Tevecha de'atzma, that you're Michayev for the Teshlumin? So the Gemara continues on the Meir, you're right. In general, regarding monetary payment, he holds like Mishal Mesle, he holds you get last and you pay, but Mesa Mishal Lesle, you're right. As the case of ma'anas Bita, that you can Michayev Mrs. Bezin, you don't pay for the Knas. Shani Hani, this halacha of Tashlumi Dal V'hei, of the price of the previous daf, the Ganach V'Tabach, L'Avodah Zarah, those are penalties, Dal V'hei. Because penalty is anything that's not exactly what you damage, you didn't damage 4 or 5 times the amount. So there, the Chidush Torah Knas, that's a novelty that the Torah introduced by the laws of penalties, because any Knas is a Chidush, and therefore, Avig of the Mikpah, although you're going to be Chayiv Misa, Mishalem, you're going to pay for the Knas. Which later on the Gemara is going to ask on Rabba, according to a mayor, that's difficult because our next Mishnah of Bita is also Knas. And you tell me that you potter, that you're not Mesa Mishal, but that Tashlumin is also Knas. The 50 silver coins for violating a girl is a Knas, not the exact amount. So how your whole Teretz is Geboit is built on the fact that you're saying that, you're right, the gentleman doesn't hold Mesa Mishal. That explains in our parak. But there it's Kanas, so therefore you can be Mesa Mishal. But our case itself in our Mishnah is Mesa Mishal, is that of Kanas. So the Gemara is going to explore that later on. But Al Kapan says, Rabba goes according to his reasoning, that differentiates in the liability of Mesa Mishal regarding if the Teshlumin is regular moment or if it's Kanas. Because Rabba says the following case. Let's say someone already had a pre-existing stolen goat. Meaning during the weekday sometime he stole the goat. And he's already liable for the principal. Then he goes and he's another sin. He shechts that he slaughters on Shabbos. Now, That means to say the monetary liability was not coming with the Isser Shabbos. The only thing that's coming with the Isser Shabbos is the chiyuv of the knas. When you slaughter it, then you chayiv for dal behei. If you have a stolen goat and you actually slaughter or sell it, then you get not only a penalty of double, you have to pay now 4 or 5 times the amount. So what's the halacha in that case? Says Rabbah, chayiv, you're going to be liable for dal behei. Why? Because this knas is a chiddush, it's a novelty, and Rabbah holds like your mayor, where shekvan is chayiv begeneva koyim shiyol with the Isser Shabbos. You were already liable for the theft before you came to Isser Shabbos. Now, what's coming with the Chil Shabbos is a knas. Oh, for knas, you could be meis and mashal. You can get the death penalty for slaughtering on Shabbos and pay for dal behei. But let's say it was ganach b'tavach b'Shabbos. Let's say, however, you stole and you slaughtered on Shabbos, where the primary principle that you're liable for was coming with the Isser of Shabbos. Oh, then you're going to be exempt, because that we hold ein meis and mashal. So since you're not liable for the principle, because you happening during the time when you did the Chil Shabbos of stealing it, you do it hoitzah, you're also not going to pay for the knas. Why? I thought you said for knas, you are meis mashal. No, because the Torah tells you pay 4 or 5 times, and not 3 or 4 or 5. Not 3 and 4, because if you're not liable for the principle, you can't be liable for 4 or 5 times. You got to be 4 or 5, not 3 or 4. Because you're taking away the principle, it's going to be 3 or 4, not 4 or 5. Additionally, Rashi points out it must be that this Tana does not hold like Reb Nosson, who says that a living creature carries itself, or must be talking about the animal is bound. So therefore, there's a Chil Shabbos when you're carrying the animal, you're doing hoitzah. Therefore, since the Geneva happened through the Chil Shabbos of hoitzah, you're going to be pater. Why you pater also on the dal behei? As like we explained, Shem ein Geneva. In other words, since you're going to be exempt from the principle because of the death penalty, even though be'etzim you're stealing, so be'etzim you should be chayiv for dal behei. But no, you're going to be exempt from the principle. It's ein tzvichim ein mechira. So then you cannot be liable for the knas of stealing or slaughtering, like we said, because the Torah says you have to pay 4 or 5, depending if it's a sheep or an ox. The sheep is going to be 4 and the ox is going to be 5, but that's only 4 or 5, not 3 or 4. She's taking away the principle. Although yes, you did steal and now you're slaughtering someone else's animal, but it's only going to be 3 or 4 times. If you take away the principle, it's not going to be 4 or 5. It's going to be 4 or 5. Now, similarly, Mamar Rabbi says, another similar related case. If let's say someone had a pre-existing stolen goat. Now, what happened was, he took along this goat with him as he's caving into someone's house. And and now he's slaughtering it in that machteres. Now, what's unique about that, when a guy is breaking into someone's house, at that moment, he's what's called a dead man. Because if the homeowner finds him digging into his house, the pasuk says in Shemais Chabei, "Ein leidam." This guy has got no blood. You're allowed to kill the guy, because this guy's coming. He knows that you're going to try to protect your money, so he's going to shoot you. So since he's coming to shoot you, you could shoot him. So the halacha is that, and now let's say as he's digging in, he has his goat with him and he's slaughtering the goat. He needs some food. He's desperate. So he's been digging into this mansion for like 3 weeks already. And he's got to make this tunnel. So, and he slaughters an animal. So Chayiv is going to be liable for the stolen goat, Dal Vehei. Why? Because he already stole this before he got into the cave. For that he was liable for. And now, although he's doing it when he's a dead man, meaning like it's like mace, but you're still mace and mashal when it comes to the knas of Dal Vehei for slaughter. But if let's say ganav b'tavach b'materes, let's say he stole it and he slaughtered it when he was caving in. So when he's digging in, he sees as he's digging in some goat, he steals the goat, he slaughters the goat as he's digging into the cave. Then he's patur. Why? Shem ain't geneva, because if you're not liable for the theft, because you're mace in that category. And you're not mace mishalim for the theft, for the principle of an ein tveicha ve'mechira. Then you can't be liable for the slaughtering and for the selling, because that's based on the principle, which you're exempt for. Why exempt? Because that's considered like mace.
But isn't common with Rabbi we say if he is having a harder punishment, then he's put up on the lighter punishment.
Right.
But he's not mace unless he has the right to kill him, but he got away, he's not mace.
Right, so the Gemara is going to explain this right now, actually, something like that, but you really are mace. You are chayiv misa in that moment.
The problem with the Rabbi is chayiv misa
they could kill him right now.
Oh,
So,
without the
yeah,
key.
so that's what the Gemara actually differentiates. The Gemara said shricha. You needed to say with we said they're both the same type of cases.
How's it connected?
What?
How's it connected?
Which one? The
Connected, you have to take it into a shiur. That's not the
if he did hagbah. So yeah, so he stole it. So the Gemara says that you need what?
Mashiach.
Wait, that can't be on someone else's property.
With an animal?
Yeah, I'm saying it's on someone else's property, but you could do hagbah. You have to know if it's something that's only not done with Mashiach and you did hagbah. Yeah, maybe you kind. Yeah, when did you do? Maybe stealing happened when you slaughtered it. So the Gemara says it's tricky, and I have to say both cases. They're both seemingly sounds like the same. No, the Yeshmin Shabbos had we said this halacha regarding Shabbos, B'Shem Yisur Israel. Its prohibition is eternal, meaning as long as anyone would testify on him that he was Machal Shabbos, the courts are going to execute him. So therefore, its death is severe to exempt you from the monetary payment. Aber Mafteres the Isur Shahu, similar to what you were bringing up, in the cave, it's only a temporary prohibition, meaning if they don't catch him that moment, you can't kill him once he leaves. So although he has quote unquote a death penalty, but it's a temporary death penalty. Same maybe I would say that it would not exempt you from the monetary penalty, from the monetary payment. So therefore we have to tell you that no, you can be patur from the Gnev. The Yeshmin Nachtes had we said the case of the cave, which is a unique halacha, that his digging is his warning. So in other words, you don't have to, although you usually have to warn, he wouldn't have to warn because you're pre-warned when you're digging in. So therefore, that's a very severe death penalty, and you don't have to be warned. So therefore, that would exempt the monetary payment. On Shabbos, but we're on Shabbos, you have to have a warning. I would say not. So therefore, you have to have both these cases. But upon them, one thing we see is that even when he slaughters it by himself, there's a chiddush by knas that's going to be meis or mishalim. So therefore, it's not difficult. How do we explain the Bryce of Ganav, the Tavach, all those cases of Avodah Zarah, and you're doing Shabbos, you're doing Avodah Zarah, how is it possible you can chayv dal dehei? Yes, because that's for the knas of dal dehei. That's a unique chiddush that you can be chayev, you can be meis mishalim, although generally it doesn't hold meis mishalim again, which the Gemara is going to ask, what do you mean? But you're trying to answer this for the case of Bita, which in itself is knas. But Kabbanim, that was the approach of Rabbah. Now, related, sounds very similar to Rabbah, Amr Papa. Says, Haisa Para Genuba.
According to this teretz, the has to be stolen before.
Yeah, it has to be stolen, exactly. Because if the Genevi can be popped on because you're not Mason Masham, then you're not going to be chayiv on the down the head. So Amr Papa says, Haisa Para Genuba. If let's say someone had a cow that was stolen for him, meaning he stole this already a while ago. But Tavcha b'Shabbos, and he slaughters on Shabbos. Like we said, you can be liable. You can find schab b'gnei because you should be able to the Yisra Shabbos. You're going to be liable for the theft that you did on Tuesday, before the Yisra Shabbos, which happened on Shabbos, and either dal dehei that you can be chayiv for. That's a knas, like we said. You could be chayiv for Yisra Shabbos for a knas. Like the Parashula, let's say he had a cow that was lent him with Tavcha b'Shabbos and he slaughters on Shabbos. So then Pat is going to be exempt. You know why? Because the moment that he's slaughtering it, that's, like I said, that could have been in the case of Mafteres too. That's when he's stealing it from the owner. Because up until then, wherever it was the owner. When he's slaughtering it, you're stealing it. And the death and the monetary penalty is happening, and the monetary payment is happening at the same time. So that's Ein Meis Mashal. So that was the teaching of Rav Papa. So Rashi says, Rav Papa Para, he's coming to tell us the cow. In other words, what are we learning from this halacha? That we didn't learn enough the keys of Gedi from Rabbah. They're saying the same thing. They're saying this halacha that you're not mace with sham, but you could be mace and pay the knas. He's just saying a case of a cow, and he's in a case of a goat. So Amalei says, no, Rav Papa Shu'ula Aslashmin. It's coming to tell us the case of had a bat when it was lent to him. When we slaughter on Shabbos that you may potter. What's the chiddush? So good when you would have thought to say, hold on, Rav Papa since Rav Papa says in Pekah Sechas Apaylim. Mishas Meshichu Dischayiv Leben Mazen Nisel. Once you drew the animal that was lent to you, you're already responsible for the feeding of the animal. So Achinami, you would think to say that you would also add on the Mishash She'el is Chayiv Ba'oinse. The moment that you borrowed it is the moment that you were responsible for anything that happened to the animal. That is, you're already responsible for the principle. And therefore, I would think to say that, the principle you're already chayiv for. Therefore, when you slaughter on Shabbos, you should be chayiv because there's no kimler rabbanei, because your liability for the principle doesn't happen now when you slaughter, it happens then when you borrowed it. Kamash Mulan, that's what we needed to tell you that since as long as when it's around, it could just be returned as is. So the moment that you slaughter is the moment that you're stealing it, and therefore that's when your liability happens, and therefore you're going to be kimler rabbanei, and you cannot be meis or mishal. Related discussion a different case, Amar Rav says, let's say Hanich len Avi in Parashula. Let's say their father left over for them a borrowed cow. Father borrowed a cow, and then he passed away. And he left over for them a borrowed cow. So even though the father's not around anymore, as long as the time of the borrowing period that the father had lent it from the owners, that's how long the sons could use it. Mesa, if let's say the cow died, the children are not responsible if an happened to it because they're not the actual borrowers. So they're not going to be chayiv an like a shayla is. Let's say Kesuvos Daf. Let's say they didn't know the father passed away, and they thought it was the father's, and they slaughtered and they ate it. So what's halacha? The halacha is they pay for how much you would pay for cheap meat, which is, as the Gemara says about Mitzvah Beis, for every zuz we consider only a quarter of a donkey, which is 2/3 of the price. And the hides go back to the owner, but the meat they pay as you pay for cheap meat. Now let's say the father left over them insurance of properties, which is really a fancy word for karka, because karka is always there. It's always insurance. Someone has property, you could always go and collect from it. Then they're responsible to pay. Now there's two different versions of what that's going on, because we had two halachas we spoke about. We had the case where the father left over for them, and they're not chayav for the einzin, and then, but if they thought, and then the second case was if they thought it was the father's and they slaughtered, they're going to pay cheap meat. So what's this halacha going on when their father left over karka that they have to pay? Now those who taught this halacha of when the father left over the machrayis nachasim have to pay, are reisha, on the first halacha, that we say that they're going to be chayiv an einzin. Meaning if, let's say something just happens to the animal, by einus, it dies. Because there's a responsibility of the father's properties from when he was alive, from when he borrowed it. And they get masala said, but those who say no, it's going on the case of the sefer, which is when they didn't know and they slaughtered and they eat it, that we said they only have to pay cheap meat. If there's a chayis nachasim, they have to pay the full amount. So the Gemara explains. Man masala reisha, one who learns it on the first halacha, or koshkin, a sefer, for sure on the sefer, meaning if they're responsible for oinus, that nothing, no fault of their own, for sure if they slaughtered and they ate it, for sure they have to pay the full amount. And upli the papa. That this agrees with papa that we said before, that he says that the moment that the einus happens is when the liability happens, not from the time that you borrowed it. That's what he said, that you can be exempt from the parashula that you slaughter on Shabbos, although that you're responsible to feed it when you borrow it, but that the geneva is only happening at the time when you actually slaughter it. So therefore, this must be disagreeing with Rav Papa, because we see that the moment when the einus is happening, that is when the liability is happening, and not from the time of the borrow. But a man the masala sefer, the one that learns about the sefer, meaning only when they slaughter it. If the father left over properties, then they have to pay, meaning a full amount, not cheap, because they should have been careful of a racial loy, but regarding the ratio, if it just dies, they're not going to have to pay. And we don't say that the father's assets are collateral from the time of the borrowing. Oh, behind the Rav Papa, that's exactly Rav Papa. That he said, no, we don't say from the time of the borrowing is when you're responsible for the payment. It's when the illness happens, when the act of damage happened. That moment, the borrower is not there anymore to be responsible, and therefore we're not going to say that there's a lien on his properties, because what lien? That only happened when the accident, when the tragedy happened, whatever it was that was done. That he wasn't alive anymore. And therefore, so that machlekes, what this final clause is going on, would hinge on if they're like Rav Papa or not like Rav Papa. Do you say that there's going to be a shiba nechasim of the shayil from the time of the she'ela, or they happen only from the time of the einus? And that's exactly the difference in what the halacha of Rav Papa was. Now, the Gemara says, the Gemara is concluding the three approaches from the original question we had regarding our Mishnah and the Mishnah Mesechus Makis, regarding who's the Tan of our Mishnah. How do we resolve it with the Mishnah Mesechus Makis that says you get Malkis, and our Mishnah says you have Tashlum? Says Gemara Bishlam, one contribution that explains our Mishnah is talking about that there was no warning, and therefore there's no Malkis, because Malkis only been the warning, and therefore you're going to have Tashlum. But generally, when there's a warning, we'll say like Mishnah Mesechus Makis that you get Malkis and you won't pay because it ain't like Mishal. We understand why the Omakar Shlakish, that he explained that the halacha of Mishnah like Remeir, who said you're like Mishal, because the Mokum Lakrabanim wanted to say like Rabbanan. You don't go like a das yachid. Who they hold that you're not like a mishal. Fine, that makes sense. Why would Rish Lakish that it should be talking about when there was no warning? That's why you pay, but generally you wouldn't pay. You would only get malchus. Amalachi would tell you no. Even the ilu aser bei pater. Since you tell me that if you would warn him, he would be pater because he'd be getting malchus. Ilu aser bei doesn't help the teretz Rabbi Yehuda. Because even if you don't warn him, nami pater, he's still going to be exempt. Because there is an element of malchus here in this case, even if you're not technically getting malchus. As the Gemara explains, also something they go according to their reasoning. Because the Chasser of Dima came and said, regarding someone who is doing an avera that you're liable for the death penalty, but is doing it by mistake, meaning there was no warning. Or let's say he's doing something that he would be liable for lashes if he did it with a warning, but he did it by mistake. And at the same time, he's doing he's doing something else that's liable for money, so that's going on both cases. Either he's doing something with Bichayev Misa, but he's doing it by mistake and money, or Chid Malchus by mistake and money, meaning he's damaging, let's say, someone's property at the same time. B'Yechon says he's going to be liable for the monetary payment, because ultimately he did it by mistake, not getting Misa, not getting Malchus. So, of course, no Kum Ram, now you're going to be Chayav at the Shlumin. Rish Lakish on the party says, no, you're going to be exempt, as the Gemara explains. B'Yechon says he's going to be liable because the whole Azarbay didn't get a warning. So, you're not being Mechayiv more than Risha Achas, which is only Kedei Rishasa. You only make him liable, incriminating for one thing. Shlaksham Apata says, no, you can be exempt. You know why? Kim the Ilo Asr Beit Potter, since had he gotten a warning, and he'd be Chayv for me, so he'd be Chayv for Mal, because he'd be Potter. Kilo Asr Beit, now he Potter, even when there's no warning, he's going to be Potter, which Gemara later on is going to explain the reasoning for his halacha. The Gemara says, Eisvei, Rish Lakish Rabbi Yechanan says you can be Chayiv. If you're ultimately not getting the Malchus, not getting the Misa, you can be Chayiv. He has one Pasuk in Shemais. Pasuk says that when the people are fighting and one of them hits a pregnant woman and she miscarries, so it says, if there's no tragedy, then the woman doesn't die, onish or onish. Then he's going to get punished. You're going to have to pay for the miscarriage of the fetuses. So there's the Gemara on top of Lama Aleph. My love, isn't it telling us asin mamish? Meaning, if the woman doesn't die, then he's going to get punished to pay for the Dmei Vladas. But if she dies, he's not going to get punished. He's not going to have to pay for the monetary payment. It sounds like even if he wasn't warned, that's the Rabbi Yechanan. Because if you weren't warned, you're not actually getting death penalty, even though the woman died. So then you should be chayiv. Why are you pater? So no, din asa. The pasuk is saying that if there's no judgment for the perpetrator, for him to get killed. For example, if the woman didn't die, or even if she died but he wasn't warned, then onish onish. That's exactly like Rabbi Yechanan. Because then the halacha is that you're not going to be maced or mishalim. It must mean that when you're only getting if there's a din asen, but if there's no din asen, then you're right. Even if she died, he's going to have to pay for the monetary penalty. One more other version, some say the question was the exact opposite. It says in the pasuk, if there's no tragedy, he's going to have to pay for the value of the fetuses. My love din asen doesn't mean a judgment of the tragedy for the perpetrator, that he's going to get executed, and only then don't you pay. But if he's not going to get executed, even if the woman died, that he would have to pay, and that's not like Rish Lakish. No, it means asin mamish. It means literally an imglik. It means if the woman dies, even if he's not going to get the death penalty, then the pasuk still exempts him from paying. It's only when there's no asin, when she doesn't die, then he has to pay. That's exactly Rish Lakish, and therefore either one could explain it's either asin mamish or din asin, and therefore it's not difficult. Thank you very much.
On the bottom of the line.